I mean, the market is building up an idea of a tempered Trump in terms of policy. I think the idea is we're going to right-size fiscal policy, right? So I think no one's taking Trump's original plans. They're thinking, okay, with a Republican Congress, we're going to be able to right-size the fiscal policy side. And, you know, it's difficult to assess exactly what is the right size, for starters, but also there's a little bit of a danger here that the markets get ahead of themselves, of course, right? So you've got the bond market going so far ahead that it tightens financial conditions and actually reels back the stock market. Might not be the worst thing in the world, but there's a possibility now that as the bond market sells off, it actually does certainly slow the stock market down.
What do you do with emerging markets?
Emerging markets, I think you've got to look at specific countries. I think Mexico is perhaps a special case indeed. I think China as well. Well, there's going to be an awful lot of sensitivity if Donald Trump does actually say, look here, China, you're a trade manipulator. You're manipulating the currency.
There is a precedent for that. I mean, this has happened before. I think it was under Clinton. And basically what happens is the Treasury designates them a currency manipulator, and then there's all sorts of conditions that they have to meet. Would that be a big problem for global trade and for global markets? No,
I think actually it's almost low-hanging fruit for the Trump administration in a way, because the immediate repercussions are quite limited. The headline doesn't look good, of course, but the immediate repercussions, I think, Sarah, you're absolutely right, are quite limited.
What about Europe and the euro? Because is this a wake-up sign for the upcoming Italian referendum and various national elections in Germany, France and Holland next year? Is there going to be a big fear in Europe that the similar thing could happen, like with Brexit, like with Trump? And what does that mean about the future of the Eurozone?
Yes, I think you're seeing some of that, and a more tempered response in Europe is partly related to that. I think the idea that, yes, the Trump victory does have implications for the Italian referendum. And you know, as you alluded to, really the French election, and the French election would be that much bigger event, really, where
Le Pen very quick to congratulate Trump.
Absolutely, yes. So that could have huge ramifications. I think what you're seeing here, and which is very different, I think, from Brexit, is the idea that the U.S. actually, the stars have aligned effectively in terms of politics. All the political uncertainty has almost gone out of the air in a way. The Republican Party is in the ascendancy, clearly, in terms of having control over both houses in Congress and the presidency. Now, very different story to the UK, for example.
So give us the bottom line picture now that we have the clarity that you guys were looking for, and now that, while we've seen a lot of Brexit parallels, it's going to be a very different outcome here in the U.S. What is the trade on dollar?
Yeah, I think you've got to run with this for the time being. So our year-end euro-dollar call is 105, and I think that looks, bang on right now. It feels very good. 95 cents, which looked aggressive for the end of 2017, I think that has, if anything, firmed up and deserves to be firmed up given, what...
Dollar-yen?
Dollar-yen, I think we're going to have to take a look at again, because I think this mix you've got right now between risk-on and higher bond yields is not a cocktail for a stronger yen.
Sterling? Dear old Sterling.
Dear old Sterling. Sterling, I think, is really caught between its own politics as much as anything else, really. I mean, obviously, the dollar story, which we actually thought was always going to be probably the dominant story before Brexit, and was going to drive cable down, Sterling, sharply down. Well, now we've got really a dollar story, as well, to drive it.
And finally, and is the Mexican peso finished getting crushed?
Let's see how that one plays out. I think that's everything to play for in terms of, what actually does happen to NAFTA, what happens to the wall. I suspect the more pragmatic side of politics will play itself out over time.